to Coaching Conversations with Coach Pam, where we empower mid-career professionals and coaches to thrive in today's demanding society. I am Coach Pam, your guide here on this journey to personal and professional success. I specialize in partnering with Gen X professionals and new coaches who are eager to overcome challenges and achieve lasting success. So, whether you are navigating the challenges of a corporate environment, or perhaps you are growing your coaching practice and or looking to create healthier work-life priorities, then you are in the right place. So today we're going to be discussing a topic that is very vital to anyone who is looking to protect their time and their energy, and it is setting boundaries. And today we will be specifically focusing on setting boundaries, in our workplace. So again, whether that's a corporate space or you have your own business as an entrepreneur, as a coach, we need to set boundaries. And so that's what we will be focusing on today. And often we hear about the importance of setting boundaries, but how do we actually do it? And do it in a way that supports our well-being and helps us to create a healthy work environment. So in today's conversation, I'll talk about some strategies for setting and maintaining boundaries that will allow you to shine both personally and professionally. So grab your notebook and your favorite pen, get your favorite beverage of choice, and let's get started. So as we shift gears here and start talking about boundaries, the first thing we always need to is understand the importance. What is the importance of setting boundaries? And setting boundaries are important, especially for Gen X professionals and coaches. Many of us have been taught that hard work and dedication mean being available all the time. And I can definitely attest to this, even when I was still in the corporate space. And even when I felt like I wasn't working, I still felt like I needed to be accessible, always checking my email, always checking my text messages. And, now that I look at it, from a different lens, I can see how unhealthy that was. And so it's this mindset that can definitely lead to burnout and a lack of fulfillment. And boundaries are they're not about pushing people away. This is a misconception that boundaries are cutting ourselves off from the world, and that is far from the truth. Creating boundaries helps us to create a space that protects our energy and our well-being. So if you think about boundaries as a way to protect yourself, it can be considered a form of self-care. It's about recognizing your limits and ensuring that your work life doesn't overshadow your personal life. It's kind of like, where do you cut it off? Where do you draw the line? And many of us who are working remotely, sometimes it bleeds over and we don't know where to cut it off. And it's setting those clear boundaries. So you're sending a message that your time and energy are valuable. So one is really considering setting boundaries as a form of self-care. The other thing to consider, when we talk about the importance of boundaries is the impact on mental health. Without boundaries, it's easy to feel overwhelmed and stressed because there is no a line drawn in the sand. There is no separation. Everything just kind of bleeds into the other. And this can really cause us to be stressed and take a toll on our mental health. And what boundaries does is that it helps us to manage our stress by allowing us to say no. And I will pause here and say no is a complete sentence. Allowing us to say no when needed so that we can focus on what truly matters. And the other reason that we talk about the importance of boundaries is enhancing productivity. So boundaries can actually make you more productive because when you're clear about your limits and where you draw the line, you can focus more effectively on tasks and deliver better results because you're more tuned into what you're doing because you have minimized some distractions by putting some boundaries in place. And so you're not constantly playing this game with yourself when you're switching between tasks or dealing with interruptions, which can really zap your energy and your creativity. All right. So those are some important reasons why we should have some boundaries. Next, we'll talk about some practical strategies. Like, what does it look like to kind of set these boundaries? And so let's talk now in having some practical ways and some things that we can do. So whether you are in a corporate setting or if you work from home, or if you're like me, you're running your own coaching business or your practice, these strategies can really help you create and maintain boundaries that protect your time and your energy. So the first thing when it comes to setting boundaries, one of the strategies is define your non-negotiables. What is important to you? When I am working with clients and they are struggling with setting boundaries or even struggling with saying no, the question that comes up is what is important to you? This is where values may come into play because now when you have identified what is important to you, those things now become your measure. And everything that you do thereafter, you now have this measuring metrics to measure things against. How is this aligning with the things that are important to me? So, for example, perhaps it's seeing your kids get on the school bus, or, is it working out in the morning? Maybe you're getting some form of exercise. Maybe it's important for you to do that each morning, or maybe 3 or 4 days out of the week. If that's important to you, where are you putting that, on the list of things that you want to set your boundaries around? Maybe, and again, if it's seeing your kids on the school bus, if you're saying that's important to you right now, then where are you carving out time to do that? And then once you've identified some of those non-negotiables, when you mention about the things that are valuable to you and what you value, once you've identified those, then you could begin to build some boundaries around them. Another one may be no work emails after 7 p.m. That's a good one. Or keeping your weekends free from work-related activities. So again, if these things are important to you, once you begin to identify those things, then you can set some parameters. And so, for instance, I did have a client that I worked with who struggled with getting off at a decent time to attend one of her child's sporting activities. And so we created some boundaries. We identified what was important to her, and it was attending, her daughter's soccer game. And so it's like, okay, so if that's what's important to you, then what are some things that you can put into place so that you're able to leave on time to get to that soccer game? And so she put some things into place, and we practiced it. Did a little experiment, do it for a week, 2 weeks, and let's see what happened. And so those are some things that you can do for yourself as well. And then when you have set those boundaries, make sure that you are communicating those boundaries to other people. Like, who else needs to know that you have set this boundary, that perhaps you need to leave work every day at 5 o'clock? Or maybe it's 3 days a week. You need to leave work at 5. Whatever those boundaries are that you have set, ensure that you are communicating those boundaries so that people can begin to respect them. And once you align yourself with it and you're practicing it, then others will know your limits and they will be more respectful of the parameters that you have set for yourself, those boundaries. And so, another thing is to make sure that you stick with your boundaries. So now that you have identified your non-negotiables, you have communicated what those boundaries are. Now it's for you to stick with them. Because that's the challenging piece, is sticking with them, because we can easily slip back into old habits and begin to start feeling guilty again. So if you have set a boundary around work hours, remember the why. Why did you create this boundary to begin with? What was happening that caused you to create the boundary, that caused you to draw the line? So remember the why you did it to begin with. And then once you've done that, continue to put it into practice. If you slip up every now and then, that's okay, but make sure you keep at it, acknowledge it, and then get right back on it. And then the last thing we'll talk about is overcoming challenges and maintaining, because it's one thing to set the boundary, but now we have to maintain them. And it is especially a challenge when you are in a work environment that you're being overworked, and that is considered the norm. When there's pressure to be constantly available or that you constantly have to be on, it becomes a challenge. And so here's some things to think about. Many of us do feel guilty when we set boundaries for fear that we will be disappointing others or face rejection. However, you have to remind yourself that setting these boundaries are a sign of self-respect, and that most people will respect your boundaries if you communicate them properly. So refrain from thinking, instead of seeing boundaries as a way to push people away, because that's a misconception, view it as a way to protect yourself, to protect your ability to show up fully when you are available and when you have the capacity to be accessible. So practice saying no in a positive way, such as, I'll love to help you with this project, but I'm currently focused on another priority at the moment. Let's schedule some time next week to discuss it further. So you're gracefully saying no, but you're also giving an option to revisit at a later time. Also, another challenge with maintaining boundaries is the external pressure, because in some workplaces or industries or what have you, there's an unspoken expectation to always be on. And this can make it difficult to set boundaries without feeling like you're falling behind or you're being judged. And so an approach to take or to consider is to lead by example. Show that by setting boundaries, that you are more focused and productive during the work hours that you have set for yourself. And it might be helpful to find other allies or other individuals in your workplace or in your network or your community who shares the same views as you, because now you're creating a supportive network for yourself and giving yourself that permission to create the boundaries that you need for yourself. And, the other thing to be mindful of is, over time, we get really complacent and we get really comfortable, and boundaries can slip. And when we're under pressure or we have a tight deadline, we give in. And that's where the boundary creep can gradually come back in and really take over. And so we give ourselves a pass, and that pass can lead us to slip up from time to time. So a way to kind of help you manage that is to regularly review and reaffirm your boundaries. Check in with yourself to see how you are doing. So let's just say you put some boundaries into play and you're giving yourself maybe 2 weeks to practice. At the end of those 2 weeks, check in and see how did it go? What went well with you setting those boundaries, and where do you feel like you need to make some adjustments? Do you need to, is it every day that you want to, if it was getting off at 5 o'clock every day, is it every day you want to get off at 5? Or maybe it's 2 days a week that you need to make adjustments to your schedule. You set the boundaries that work best for you, but after you've put them into some practice, you may want to just take a look at them and revisit them to make sure that they're still relevant and that they are still serving you. So, as we just kind of recap and just bring it all in, the art of setting boundaries. So, whether you at work or again, you have your own coaching practice, it will look different for everybody. And we've talked about the essentials of protecting your time and your energy. And we also I gave you a few strategies to help you to start creating and setting some boundaries for yourself. And lastly, I did share a little bit of how to overcome some of the common challenges that might creep in on you. And so I encourage you, as you have listened to this, I encourage you to take some time this week to create your own boundaries. What areas are you feeling really challenged where you feel like you really need to set some parameters for yourself? What are your non-negotiables? And how can you start setting clearer expectations around those boundaries that will support your well-being and your productivity? Setting boundaries is a form of self-care, and it is self-respect to you, taking care of your mental capacity, taking care of your well-being. And it's essential to creating a healthy and sustainable work environment. So whether you find yourself in a office setting or whether you find yourself working at home and for yourself, you still need to set some boundaries. And I know I need to as well when I think about being a coach, working my coaching practice and being able to find and define my non-negotiables and challenging myself to stick with them. So if you feel like you need some support, and if you found this information valuable today, then I inspire you to start creating some boundaries. And if you enjoyed it, go to my YouTube channel, Coaching Conversations with Pam, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button so that you're always aware of upcoming sessions and episodes that I will be sharing. And I am here to help you. I am here to help you as your coach. And so if you are ready to take that boundary setting skill to the next level, like you are like, Pam, you are talking my language and I need to set some boundaries. Schedule some time with me. I will be more than happy to walk with you and help you on this journey. So together we can create a work life of priorities that allow you to shine. Until next time, keep elevating your potential and exceed.